This is a Dyneema soft shackle. It's typically used anywhere that you would normally use a bow shackle, but it's much lighter, and for the same diameter it's much stronger. This particular soft shackle is a quarter inch Dyneema. It's got the individual lines have a breaking strength of around 8,600 pounds. The shackle itself has a theoretical breaking strength of just about 20,000 pounds, which gives the shackle a working load limit of around 3,300 pounds. Some of the people on Slack chat have asked if I could demonstrate how these are made, so I'm going to try to show how to build one from some quarter-inch Dyneema line. To start with, you'll need some Dyneema, a tape measure, bit of string to use to tie a constrictor knot with. I use a piece of folded welding wire as a fid, and I also use a regular fid, but you can just as easily use a chopstick or a knitting needle or even a Bic pen for what we'll use this for. And then the only other tool that I really need is a sharp knife. I use a box knife. So we'll start by just measuring out the length of material, or the length of am steel that we need. And for this quarter-inch soft shackle I need 52 inches, so I'm going to measure out 52 inches. At my 52-inch mark, I'm going to tape it tight. And I'm just using regular electrical tape here. Make a couple of wraps. And then I'm going to cut this rope at a 45-degree angle, so we've got a little bit of a taper on it, and it'll help us later on. Just like that. Now that we have our line cut, we're going to fold it in half, find the middle, and we need to figure out how big to make our noose. The noose is the part of the soft shackle that hooks around the button knot, and it's kind of important to get this guy the right size. So what we'll do is I'm going to take 3 strands of line here, stuff it through, and that's going to give me about the right diameter for my noose. And I'm just going to visually find where I want my crossover to be for this noose. So I'll look at that, mark where I want my crossover, and then I'm just going to loosen the weave up a little bit and stuff my fid through. And I'm going to count. This is a 12-strand braid, so I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So make sure that I've got 3 strands going each direction on each side of my fid. So I've gone right straight through the middle of my rope. And then I'm going to take my tapered end, stuff it right through to make my noose. Now if I line up my ends, I should have a noose that's an appropriate size. So it's pretty similar to the other one. And my ends here should still be even. Now the next step is going to be making the button knot, so I'm going to measure where to put my knot, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark that knot by creating a constrictor. So make a constrictor knot here. I'm going to tie these 2 tails together 15 inches up from the bitter end. So I'm going to just use my ruler here, go up to 15 inches, and pull down my constrictor knot here. Okay, now what this does, this constrictor knot's going to hold my tails in place so they're still even, and once we're yanking on them to create or not, everything's gonna just stay put, and my noose won't change size. The next part is creating the button knot, and creating this guy is probably the most complicated part of the whole soft shackle. There's pretty good pictures of each individual step on l36.com, and also there's some links on Sailing Anarchy in the load testing thread about how these button knots are made. This is a special knot that was designed by Brian Toss just for soft shackles. So I'll try to make it so that you can see what's going on. We start with one end, we loop it around the other end, just like so. Then take the second end up, down, and over. So now that's the first part of our knot. Should look something like that. I try to pull a fair amount of slack out of here because I'm going to need as much slack in the bitter ends as I can for the next step. And the first part is to take one end all the way around everything and up next to the other bitter end. And then this guy does exactly the same thing up next to that bitter end. So now we have done that. And the last part is right where these two guys cross over here in the middle. We're gonna just stuff these tails down on either side through that cross and make sure that each one crosses over and comes out on the opposite side of the standing part down below. So let's see, there and there. So now we've got what looks like a really pretty ugly knot. And the next step is going to be to start tensioning this knot up so that we can make it start to look like this one. So what we'll do is we'll just start with the standing parts. There's one there that's attached to the noose, and this other side here. We're just going to chase it around and try to get as much slack out as we can. And we want to do this in a couple of steps. We'll make a couple of laps around while we do this, because if we try to go too far all at once, it'll just get the knot really unbalanced and it'll be really hard to get evened out. So there's half, there's half. So now I've made one pass on both sides, and my tails should still be even. Okay, I'm going to go make another pass just by hand, but what I'm going to do now is I've got two standing parts, one here and one here. And as you're tightening down, you're twisting the knot around, things get confused and you can't remember which one of those two guys you started with. So what I do is I take one end of my constrictor knot there and stuff it up through there so I can mark which one of those is the first one that I start with, so that I can go ahead and tighten this guy down on another pass. And once I finish, no matter how much I've twisted this knot around, I still know that that's the guy that I started with. And now I need to start my next pass right here with the other side. So now I can make the next pass over here. Okay, I've made two passes now, and my tails still are even. This is important. So now the trick is, it's pretty much too tight to pull through by hand anymore. So the next pass I'm going to make by pulling these strands with a fid, just to get it a little bit tighter. So we'll just chase it around same way as we did before. And we should still have tails that are the same length. So now we've made a couple of passes by hand to get this knot tight, and it's not quite as tight as the one we've got here. That one kind of sounds like smacking a rock on the table. That one doesn't. So we still need to get it tighter. And we can start by just pulling a little bit. This is going to get it a little bit tighter, but not much. But it does help a little bit. And then next step, we'll take it out to the handyman to really crank it down. At this point, you'll see the constrictor knot that we tied is still up inside the knot. Once we get this knot really tightened down, that'll pull out and we'll be able to undo that knot. Okay. After one more lap with the FID, pulling the strands of the knot tighter, and then some pretty heavy duty pulling by hand, we can see that I've pulled the knot out a little bit. The constrictor knot's actually sticking outside of the knot now, but still it's not nearly as tight as what we want it to be. So next step, we'll go actually pull some real tension. Okay, here we are with just a handyman jack, and I've got a shackle and a quick link attached to the toe of the jack, and the foot just has a couple of shackles on it. So I'm going to use that to pull some tension in this knot to pre-stretch it before I bury the tails. So I just run the knot through the quick link, and then I can hook my noose up right here in the shackle. Then I'm going to pull some tension with the jack, and then I'll turn the knot 90 degrees, pull tension more, and then turn it 90 degrees, pull tension more. I'll probably just show you the one here. So we get it up to tension and start pulling down on it. Just like that. And then I'll turn it 90 degrees and do it a couple, 3 or 4 more times. Okay, so we got our knot all tensioned up. I took the constrictor knot off, and now we're ready to do our tail bury. This guy looks pretty much like this guy now, with the exception of the tail still sticking out. And you notice the one we just made is a little bit longer still than the one that's completed. And what's going to happen is when we do the tail bury, it's going to shorten up a little bit. So let's start by tapering each of these tails before we bury. If we don't taper them, we end up with a really sharp shoulder in the line here, where it drops off of the tail. So if we taper it down, it just makes the shackle just a little bit stronger. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start about halfway down the tail and start to taper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pulling out pairs of line. So you can see that there's crossing pairs here. I'm going to pull out a pair, and then I'm going to skip across, then pull out another pair, skip across, and then pull out another pair. So I'm going to pull out half the lines, or basically 3 pairs or six strands I'm going to pull out. So I'll just do this. There's one. Then I'm going to skip across, pull out another pair. And then skip across, and then pull out another pair. This gives us a pretty good taper. So now we've got something that looks like that, and we can just use our razor knife to cut these guys off right next to the rope. So, and by the way, your regular pocket knife probably won't cut Dyneema quite as easily as a box knife. A sharp box knife will. This stuff is really murder on a blade. So after doing a couple of splices, it's time to change the blade actually. Okay, so there's our taper. Now what we need to do is we need to get our little folded wire here up inside one of these standing parts so that we can attach it to the tail and pull the tail into the standing part. It's possible to run the folded end of the wire up, but it's a lot easier to start with a fid. So I'm going to start with a fid, go between one of the strands there. And you want to make sure that you're quite a ways below the edge of the tail, because this is going to shrink up when you pull the tail through. So you need to be well below. I'm going to throw my fid through there as far as I can get it, and I'm going to try to exit it as close to this knot as I can. Right, like that. And when you're exiting there, make sure that you don't split any of those strands. I'm going to go between strands. So now that we've kind of made a little tunnel there, we can run our little bent wire up through there, out through our hole, and this tape from the end we can reuse probably. Take this guy, tape him right onto this wire. And sometimes it's easier to just use regular Scotch tape for this step, because it'll slide through the Dyneema a little bit easier than the electrical tape does. But sometimes this works okay. We'll try it. Got that taped on there, and then we can just carefully feed this right on through. And go ahead and pull that tight into the tail. And here we go. We can untape this. Maybe. There it is. Done with that. Now, make sure that's pulled down tight. It looks okay there. And right before we bury this tail here, what we can do is unbraid this a ways. Fan these guys out, and taper these last few pieces a little bit. So just lay them out, and then hit them hit them with the box knife to give them a nice little taper like that. And now we've got a full taper on our tail, and we bury it. Just milk it down, and that's one leg. Now all we got to do is do the same thing to the other leg, and we'll have a completed soft shackle. Okay, I just buried the other tail on this. I didn't subject you to watching me do it twice in a row, but now this soft shackle that we just made is pretty much the same length, and everything is the one that was our pattern, and they both have tight knots on them, and they're ready to go. They're ready to be used.